Suze. He always said he never played favorites. He claimed to love all his wives the same. But if that was true, why did each one of them feel so invisible in her own marriage? You can see it in every shot, the subtle looks, the loaded pauses, the way he'd lean just a little harder towards her. Robyn, the so-called final wife, but the first in every choice that truly mattered. And while the world kept asking why Robyn, the truth was never just about love. It was about control, about image, and about the desperate need to rewrite a story that was falling apart in real life. Because when Kody Brown said, "We're a family," what he really meant was, "We're a system, and I'm the one holding all the power." He didn't intend for everyone to notice, but they did. It started small, a shift in his body language, a new tone in his voice. Kody used to preach, "We're all equal here." But when Robyn entered the picture, the air itself changed. The laughter grew quieter. The glances turned colder. The wives felt it long before they dared to admit it. Meri was the first to pull back. Christine began to question everything. Janelle, she just clammed up, with the kind of silence that stings more than any fight. Robyn wasn't just another wife. She was the face of something new and something deeply threatening. Because Kody didn't just fall in love. He fell in love with someone who validated his ego. He wanted to be adored. Suddenly, every scene began to center around her. Every family discussion circled back to her views. And every single time someone disagreed, Kody had the same response. "You're just jealous." But jealousy was never the problem. Control was He had finally built a world where he didn't have to compromise anymore. A world where love looked more like loyalty and less like partnership. And while Robyn smiled softly in the background, the rest of them began to fade from the story one by one. It didn't explode all at once. It cracked, quietly, painfully, over a long period of time. The cameras caught the forced smiles, the tense dinners, the "we're working through it" moments. But off camera, there were conversations that never made it to air, tears that didn't need a script, and words that cut deeper than anyone dared to admit. Christine was the first to say it out loud. He's not the same man anymore. She wasn't angry, not at first. She was heartbroken. She kept waiting for him to look at her again. To truly see her. But Kody's eyes were always somewhere else. Robyn had his attention. Robyn had his protection. And for everyone else he had excuses. When Meri tried to talk about how lonely she was, Kody dismissed it as drama. When Janelle spoke up, he accused her of being disrespectful. It became a brutal pattern. Whenever they reached out, he would withdraw. And that's when something inside them started to change. The wives began to understand this wasn't about love anymore. It was about survival, emotional survival within a system designed for their silence. And as the cracks widened, one by one, they stopped pretending. They stopped defending him. They stopped believing that the favorite wife was just a rumor. Because deep down they knew it wasn't a rumor, it was the game plan. He called it fairness. He claimed every wife had a choice, every voice a seat at the table. But fairness in Kody's world always came with strings attached. When Robyn came along, those strings were woven. She didn't have to beg for his time. She didn't have to fight for his attention. She just had to agree with him, and that was enough. Kody rewarded obedience like it was a loyalty program. If you went along with him, you got peace. If you challenged him, you got distance. And so, his favorite wife strategy was born not out of love, but out of a desperate need for control. He didn't want 4 equals anymore. He wanted 1 supporter and 3 silent witnesses. So he gave Robyn everything he had, slowly taken from the others: affection, respect, partnership, but only because she never challenged his authority. Christine noticed first. She famously said, "He listens to Robyn like she's his boss." Meri tried to just close her eyes to it. Janelle tried to rationalize it, but in their hearts, they all knew the rules had shifted and they were no longer players in the game. The favorite wife wasn't just his preference. She was his shield, too. His way of proving that the system worked as long as you didn't fight back. But the tighter he held on to his illusion of control, the more reality began to break through. Because when you build a foundation of love on fear, you don't create unity, you create rebellion. It began quietly. No shouting matches. No dramatic walkouts. Just long, cold silences, frosty dinners, and empty chairs at family gatherings. Christine stopped calling. Meri stopped trying to explain herself. And Janelle, she stopped asking for his time altogether. For years, they had played their roles flawlessly, smiling for the cameras, supporting the vision, and acting like equality still existed. But silence is so much louder than an argument. And Kody started to feel it, the space, the shift in the atmosphere. The wives no longer looked to him for permission. They were looking past him. That's when he started to panic. He doubled down on control with long speeches about respect and endless lectures on family loyalty. But it was too late. They weren't listening anymore. Janelle started spending her weekends away. Christine found her own voice, the one she'd suppressed for years with compromises. Even Meri, who had waited so long for just crumbs of affection, began to realize the truth. She wasn't invisible by accident, she was invisible by design. And Robyn. She could feel the house of cards shaking. She tried to cling tighter, to remind Kody that they're just hurt. They'll come around, but this time, they wouldn't. Because this wasn't about jealousy, this was about waking up. And once you wake up from that kind of manipulation, you never go back to sleep. For years, he believed he was invincible. The head of the family. The man who had all the answers. The one who had built a life other people could only dream of. But control is a fragile crown, and one by one, his queens began to step away. It wasn't dramatic at first. Just absence, an empty seat, a quiet holiday, a call that went unreturned. But the absences grew into statements. Christine stopped showing up for family dinners. Janelle refused to sit through another loyalty lecture, and Meri finally gave up waiting for him to change. The man who once had 4 wives now had only one, and even that relationship was fraying under the weight of his ego. Kody couldn't see it, of course. He kept calling it betrayal. He blamed social media, the show, the rumor mill. But the truth, it was his own game plan that destroyed him. He built his authority on fear, on silence, on the idea that love could be managed like a business. But once love becomes a tool for control, it always falls apart. Even Robyn began to feel it, the tension, the distance, the exhaustion of holding on to something that couldn't be held. She'd been his supporter, his justification, his validation. And now, she was his prison. The very system he used to control everyone else had finally trapped him. Too, because you can't demand loyalty from hearts you've already shattered. There's a moment, the kind that changes everything, when silence speaks volumes, more than any argument. For Kody Brown, it happened not in a fight, but in the quiet of his own conscience. He was standing in the middle of a vacant living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes, where the remnants of laughter were now just ghosts in the corners. Terry. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders of the life he had systematically dismantled. A picture missing from the wall. A child's drawing, crumpled and left behind. A postcard from a wife who had finally grown tired of waiting for him to show up. He had built this kingdom to prove he was capable of loving more, but all it showed the world was how much he was capable of losing. The wives he had silenced were now speaking louder than ever in interviews, on social media, in the stories they shared with fans. And the world was finally seeing past the fantasy. The favorite wife wasn't just a choice, it was a tool. A way to divide, to conquer, to maintain authority where love should have been. Even Robyn, the one who was favored, began to buckle under the strain. She had won the husband, but she had lost the family. And the home that once felt like a sweet victory now just echoed with emptiness. In private, Kody wasn't the confident patriarch anymore. He was just a man trying to talk himself out of taking the blame. But deep down, he knew you can't rewrite the truth when the whole world is watching. And you can't call it love when every gesture of affection comes with a price tag. He wanted power. He got loneliness. He wanted devotion. He got silence. He wanted to be loved by all of them. And now he's loved by none. It all came crashing down on a quiet Sunday afternoon. No cameras, no producers, no scripts to control the narrative. Just Kody sitting in that oversized house, surrounded by the echoes of everything he'd lost. For the first time, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was punishment. Christine's laughter. Gone. Janelle's quiet strength. Vanished. Meri's infinite patience. It had burned out long ago. Even Robyn the chosen one walked through the halls like a shadow, with hollow eyes and a forced smile. He thought picking a favorite would make his life simpler. That loving one woman completely would finally bring him peace. But all it did was reveal the truth he had been avoiding his entire life. He never really wanted love, he wanted control. And now, that control was slipping away too. His children stopped calling. His name became a meme. The family, he once paraded as proof of his success, became a public testament to how ego destroys everything it touches. He tried to rebuild her reshoot scenes, to reframe his actions with words like loyalty and respect. But every excuse sounded hollow, because you can't edit out the hurt you've caused. You can't do a retake on trust, you can't fake a bond that has already been broken. And as the world watched his kingdom crumble, they saw what he could unbring himself to admit that his favorite wife's strategy was never about faith or family. It was about fear. Fear of losing power. Fear of not being enough. Fear of facing himself. But the reckoning always comes, and when it finally did, Kody had no one left to blame but the man in the mirror. And now, this is where the story ends. Or maybe, this is where it truly begins. Because somewhere in that vast, echoing mansion, the one built on broken dreams and carefully constructed lies, Kody Brown is alone. No cameras, no adoring wives, no laughter from a full house. Just the sound of his own breathing. And the ghosts of every choice he ever made. He said he did it all for love. But love doesn't create isolation. Love doesn't silence the voices that need to be heard. And real love never asks you to choose between being honest and being worshipped. So why does he still cling to the narrative? Why does he still act like he's the victim in his own tragedy? Maybe because admitting the truth would mean facing the one thing he has feared all his life, that he was not a patriarch after all. He was the lesson. The wives have moved on. The children have grown stronger, but Kody is still there, rewriting his own history, trying to convince the world and himself that he's okay. And Robyn, she is finally seeing what everyone else saw years ago, that being the favorite doesn't mean you re the most loved. It means you're the most useful shield for someone else's guilt. But here's the twist. No one saw coming behind every downfall. There's always a secret waiting to surface. A secret too big to stay buried forever. And the whispers coming out of Flagstaff. They speak of something massive about to break. Maybe it's a confession, maybe it's a reunion, or maybe it's the final collapse of everything Kody has fought to protect. Whatever it is, when it comes out, it won't just end the story, it will redefine it. So, you have to ask yourself, when the truth finally hits, where will you stand? With the man who lost everything trying to control it, or with the women who finally found freedom by walking away? Because this isn't the end of a family. It's the beginning of an expose. Stay tuned, because what's coming next will change everything. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to keep up with this story, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll see you in the next video.